Hello, I'm Rebecca Flaherty and today we're going to be making this cool sunshine pattern here. This is a beginner level tutorial, but if you've never made a pattern using the diamond method before, then you might want to start with this video, which has a complete introduction into this way of making patterns in Procreate. It's a much better place to start if you're someone who likes to understand the why as well as the how, but you will also be able to follow along with this tutorial if you just do what I do, and you'll end up with the same pattern at the end. For accessibility, all of my videos have got fully edited subtitles, and the different sections in this video are all listed in the description if you want to go ahead and skip to the beginning of the tutorial. This pattern is just one from a new series of patterns I'm working on, and by the end you'll have a collection just like this. We'll be making all the motifs with this free stamp brush. This one here, it's got all the motifs there, and also the palette we'll be using. You can find those over in the Pattern Maker's Toolkit over on my website. It's got all the motifs in there for you to trace over and help you get off to a quick start. The Pattern Maker's Toolkit is free to join, and I'll put a link for that in the description. I'm also going to be using my Pattern Maker canvas brush set. Just bring it in here from iCloud. So this has all of these textures and the layers built in here to help you build out a pattern. If you don't have the Pattern Maker canvas, you can still follow along. You just need to make a 12 by 12 inch canvas at 300 dpi, and then on a new layer, just with any old brush, you just need to draw an empty diamond. It doesn't have to be perfect or precise, it just needs to go all the way off the edges, and then you'll have this same layer here that I have for helping me build out my sketch. So let's jump right in with the tutorial, and I'll talk more about everything as we go along. So I think I'll leave the background colour just as it is, because I'll probably go for a light colour later. But as you remember from the previous tutorials, we draw our motifs in white first, and that would be hard to see if I put the background in white. So let's go into our layers, and we'll start here on our draw here first layer. This is an empty layer above the sketch diamond. I'm going to find my summer icon set and grab the sunshines. Let's start with this one here, and I'm going to, in this dark pink colour, stamp one of those and add another layer. Stamp one of the next kind of sunshine, add a new layer, and then put this one on a different layer. Oops, well, actually that doesn't matter because they're on separate layers, doesn't matter if they overlap. So now we've got these sunshines on different layers, and then we can duplicate these and spread them around the canvas to make our pattern. So I'll start with this one here, tap to transform, and I'm going to turn snapping and magnetics off so I can move this around nice and easily. So I'm just going to spread these evenly around the canvas, just starting off with working along this edge and this edge here of the diamond. And then you can duplicate these and use those to build out the other parts as well. This one's quite a nice easy layout because all of the motifs are about the same size, and the brush size I have for this one, if you want your brush the same size as mine, is 25%, and I've got that for all of the different suns. So I'm going to pinch to merge all of these together, and then I'm going to pinch it down with the sketch diamond. So I have all of this on one layer now, and I'm going to duplicate this layer and turn snapping and magnetics back on. And I'm dragging this down into the corners and up into that corner, and what you want to be looking out for is these orange lines intersecting there. And with the Pattern Maker canvas, because this is a perfect and precise diamond, you'll have this as an extra visual to see that everything is lined perfectly on top of each other. If something was a little bit off here, then you would see something like that. So these top four layers here, I'm going to pinch those together, and that's around the outside bits. I'm going to tap and invert that, and then we can see what needs to be spread out a little bit better. So I think this sun needs to move down a little bit more, so we'll come down to our pink layer, grab our freehand select tool, and just draw around this sun here. It's okay to have little bits of the diamond grabbed when you move stuff, as long as you don't move these bits on the edges. So we'll just put snapping and magnetics back off again and just move him a bit further down there. And then this one also needs to be shuffled down because those bits are overlapping there. So we can draw around this one. And then put him down there. Because we've moved stuff on this layer, the positioning on the green layer now isn't correct, so we can delete that one. And then we just repeat this again to make sure we now have everything in the right place. Put snapping and magnetics back on. And now everything's nicely lined up on there, there's no bits that are overlapping. So we're now ready to move on and start illustrating these motifs. When we come to illustrate these, the only ones that we need to draw are the pink ones. The green ones around the outside will be made by duplicating what we draw in a moment. So I'm going to bring my sketch folder above my pattern folder and turn that one on. And I'll just bring down the opacity on this because I want to still be able to see the faces for tracing over those when I've drawn on the pattern layer. So as before, we're going to draw these in white and then scribble over them in a colour. So on this first layer of the pattern folder, I'm going to grab a plain white and I'm going to use the tracing crayon again. And then I'm just going to trace around all of these, not paying too much attention about staying inside the lines because we want them to all look slightly different and slightly unique. And we can fill these with colour drop. And then as always, we've got this gap here and you can never really get rid of it no matter how much you adjust the threshold on your colour drop, but there's an easy way to fix it. So I'm going to duplicate this layer, add a Gaussian blur of 3%, hide the blurred layer, grab my select tool, change it to automatic and tap outside the areas here. You want to adjust the threshold on this until it comes halfway between the edge of your shape and the bit you want to get rid of. Then invert the selection, add a layer and tap to fill this layer. You can now delete the blurred layer underneath. And what this has done, if I hide the layer I drew underneath, it's just created a smaller solid shape inside this one, and you can then merge those together, and that's all of that filled now. So now we're going to add some colour to our sunshines, so we'll add a layer above, clip it down, and I'm going to use my fun sketcher brush and I'll grab this yellow colour here. And I'm just going to scribble over all of these sunshines nice and messy like this. This fun sketcher brush has a lovely texture to it. That's how it looks without the textures on, and then when we add these texture overlays, it just brings it up even more. All of these textures in this set are all fully seamless at this 12-inch square size. And now I want to add a little bit of variation to the sunshine, so I'm going to alpha lock this layer. I'm going to go to the summer icon set and grab this colour changer, and I'm going to keep my primary colour as this yellow, and then secondary colour I'm going to change to this slightly lighter orange colour. And then we can then scribble over these and it's going to give us a nice variation in tone. And how this brush works, it just alternates between sort of leaning more towards this colour or that colour. It just puts a little bit of variation in the colour. You do need to make sure that you draw the whole of the sun in one colour, because every time you lift up your brush you'll get a slightly different colour. So you need to draw over the sun all in one colour each time. So that's all of our sunshines coloured in now. We just need to add the little details for the faces. So I'm going to add a layer above, and from my pattern maker brush set I'm going to use this line details brush here. As I mentioned in the first tutorial on this series, it's just this line detail brush that this one comes with the set, and in this one I've duplicated it and I've just turned all the stabilization off on this one so that we can draw like wiggly and wavy lines as opposed to nice smooth lines with this one. So I'm going to use this almost black colour here and this line details duplicated brush which has the smoothing turned off, and I'm just going to trace over all of the faces and all of the rays of sunshine coming out. And then so that this matches like with the vibe of the watermelon one we worked on first, I'm just going to put a little touch of that outline just around there. Now I want to add a layer and put a little bit of rosy cheeks on these sunshines. So I'm going to grab my chalk duster brush and this light pink colour here, and maybe bring down the opacity on this and just put a little bit of cute rosy glow on their cheeks. And then again, carrying the theme on from the other patterns in this set, I'm going to fill in some of the spaces with a few dots. So we'll add a layer to do that. I'm going to grab white and use my mini dot brush and just freehand some dots in the spaces here. If you're not confident freehanding it and are worrying about stuff overlapping on the edges, you could lay these out on the sketch layer and then go over them in this folder, but I'm just going to freehand these for now. Then I'm going to duplicate this layer, alpha lock it, and then I'm going to recolor it and put some different coloured dots on here. And then again, to match the other patterns, we're going to do that little layer of white underneath, which is slightly offset. So we've already got our layer here of white underneath the dots. I'm going to duplicate this layer underneath the sunshines, grab that one, and also the swipe right on the one underneath the dots. Tap to transform, turn off snapping, and then I'm just going to drag it slightly down and to the left there, so we've got that kind of cool offset thing going on. So next we'll look at how to build out the tile. I'm going to turn off this pattern marker here and turn off the sketch layer there. If you have plenty of layers spare, you can duplicate this whole pattern group and flatten it. If you're short on layers, then just turn off the background colour, turn off the textures as well, swipe down with 3 fingers, copy all, and come up here and swipe down again and tap paste. And that's going to put a flattened copy of everything without having to duplicate a whole group. We can turn off our layers folder now. And then on this layer here, turn the background colour on again, and I'm going to draw a mark going all the way off the edges of these 2 corners. And then in the same way that we built out the sketch preview, we can do this with this to build out our pattern tile. So we can duplicate this, and with snapping and magnetics on, we can drag this down and into that corner, being really careful that we've got these orange lines here. If you find that yours isn't snapping very easily, if it's kind of flickering between 2 different things, make sure you've got all your layers turned off, because if you have this turned on, it will also try and snap to things on the layers that are showing. So by having that turned off, it's only going to be able to snap to the edges of the canvas. So in these top 4 layers you can pinch together and erase those marks in the middle, and then erase the corner marks off of that bottom layer as well, and then you can pinch these 2 together. And there we go, that is now a finished pattern tile. Using this diamond repeat will mean that you should get no gaps when you upload to Spoonflower, but before we save and export, it's always good to do a quick test right here in Procreate. So I'm going to turn my textures back on and just show you a quick with and without and how cool that looks. And then we're going to swipe down with 3 fingers and we're going to tap copy all. Then come up to our very top layer here, swipe down again, and then tap paste. And then underneath, I'm going to add a layer underneath that and make it black. And then if there's any mistakes or flaws in this pattern, that black will show through the gaps and we'll know if there's a problem before we export and upload. So I'm going to tap to transform this pasted in layer. And then we can just put this into all the corners, zoom in, and we can see there's no gaps there on that seam. Pinch those two together, duplicate, and snap that down to the bottom there. And again, we can zoom in there and see that there's no gaps there. Don't forget, you can get the stamp brushes here and the colour palette that I've used over in the Pattern Makers Toolkit. It's kind of like a Patreon group, except it's free to join. You'll get access to all the resources in the Pattern Makers Toolkit on my website, including those I make for my Skillshare classes, early access to some of my YouTube tutorials and drawing prompts, discounts in my Etsy store, and one new freebie exclusively via email every month. If you want to learn more about the diamond method and how I use it in my professional Procreate to Photoshop workflow, using automations and smart objects, you can find that class on Skillshare. If you're new to Skillshare and you sign up with the link below, you'll get an extra 30 days for free. That's all from me. Don't forget to tag me at Becky Flaherty when you share your patterns on Instagram so I can see them. And don't forget to subscribe here on YouTube if you want to see more pattern tutorials like this. Have fun, stay creative, and I will see you soon.